Good day, everyone. Before we go into the parliamentary footage, I want to briefly explain why this question raised in Parliament is important and what it means in simple terms. Okay, this is not an attack on anyone. It's about public money and trust funds and accountability. Okay. In 2022, the government passed the Non-Tax Revenue Act, or NTRA. Okay, in simple terms, this law centralized most non-tax revenue, such as dividends, levies, fees, and charges, and required that money to be sent to Waigani first into the consolidated revenue account. Okay, the government says this improves control and revenue management. However, many statutory bodies and provinces say it has made it harder to access funds needed to operate and deliver services. So, this act is also linked to the government's medium-term revenue strategy from 2023 to 2027, which aims to increase revenue and reduce borrowing. Okay. Against this background, the Honourable Member for Alotau raised three important questions in Parliament, directed to the Prime Minister on behalf of the people of Milne Bay, Oro, and Alotau. First, he asked whether the government can review the Non-Tax Revenue Act 2022 because statutory bodies still have legal duties, yet their revenue is centralized. Okay, when funding is delayed, service delivery suffers. Second, he raised concerns about log expert development levies, and these levies are collected for development purposes and held in trust. Around 13 million has been reportedly been held for several years. The question is whether the trust money can now be released to benefit the people it was intended for. Okay. And then he raised the issue of oil palm shares and dividends of Oro and Milne Bay. Okay. These shares were acquired in 2010. Dividends were paid in cash and funds were held in trust by the state. While 10 million per province has been released, yet concerns remain about the funds held in trust for 15 years. Okay. When money is held in trust, the state is a custodian and not the owner. Okay. These are serious questions about governance, trust, and development, raised respectfully on the floor of Parliament. So I'll let you watch this footage by the Honourable Member for Alotau.
Honourable Member of Alotau.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to ask my question to the Treasurer. Unfortunately, he's not here, so I'll ask this question to the Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, question normally centered around the Non-Tax Revenue Act of 2022 and the government's medium-term revenue strategy 2023 to 2027. Mr. Speaker, while I commend the Treasurer's efforts and, of course, the government's efforts in terms of working on the strategy to 2023 to 2027 in its efforts to reach a surplus budget by 2027 and, of course, maintain an annual growth of 5%. And, of course, we hear the Treasurer trying to bring the budget to a surplus under a 13-year plan. Mr. Speaker, I am equally also concerned of this act and its impact on some of our economic sector departments. A big legal background, so Prime Minister can clear legal law. Sorry, Speaker. Can I
Honourable Member.
continue? I'll just dive straight into my questions. Mr. Speaker, can the government undertake a review of the NTRA Act 2022 that is saving a demise on our economic sector departments and statutory bodies? Number two, Mr. Speaker, under the NTRA Act, can the Prime Minister assure my people of Alotau that our log export development levies that were held in trust for the last 6 years, close to 13 million, can be released? And finally, Mr. Speaker, can the Prime Minister inform the people of Oro and Milne Bay, especially my district of Alotau as oil palm development district, on the oil palm shares paid dividends that was paid in cash by New Britain Palm Oil when they procured these shares in 2010. These shares held in trust by the state for the last 15 years for both these provinces. Can the Prime Minister look into these reports on the fully paid shares that were paid in cash and held in trust by government? I want to also acknowledge that the government has released 10 million on each of those provincial dividend shares, but respectfully, these funds have been held by state for the last 15 years. Thank you.
Honourable Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Milako, thank you, Long. Very good question. A series of questions asked by the member for Alotau. The good question asked by member for Alotau, I want to firstly say he asked for a possible review, and review is not out of reach. The question is correct and in order. Certainly, we can have a review to see the mechanics of NTRA, that it must work well without killing the golden goose that lays the egg, so to speak. The rationale of NTR coming on board, Mr. Speaker, was such where many of the boards, they are not open for public scrutiny except through cabinet. So their work plan comes through cabinet. Of course, later on the minister does submit annual reports to the parliament. But we have observed over time, and this backdates into possibly 2 or 3 governments up till the Pangu administration. Nothing against the boards, they operate by law, but the boards, to the understanding of all of us, the boards operate scrutiny of the minister and the cabinet process, and not fully to the parliament. It is the budget process that parliament has transparency and full knowledge of what is happening all over the place. We've seen many times when our board, for instance, is investing in PIP, and planning department also allocates similar money for PIP. And so there has always been overlap in terms of board's function with little scrutiny, except through the cabinet process and our own government PIP program. So we felt it was important, without compromising a percentage that must be held back and the core recurrent expenditures of those agencies. The residual balance of all this fund must be swept into the working public accounts, because the budget process is a transparent process where the entire leadership, all members on both sides of the house, we see through and we have a look at the money plan for the oncoming year. So to try to mitigate, and not to mention the last few years, but I want to make mention on earlier years, when we have supplementary budgets, when we have surpluses, agencies were hoarding funds and running parallel programs, running their own programs, many times also pet projects that is not geared towards retiring the major focus of government. We said, let's sweep the excess residual into working public accounts. The agency or sector concerned keeps a residual, and the formula, when I was finance minister, the formula we went was 90-10. 90 swept and 10 is maintained by the department. And that is at net. The gross element of fund is retained. The gross depicts the recurrent expenditures. The department in its own work plan, the annual work plan, retains what it needs to retain, and the surplus, the profit, if they're making profit in simple terms, 90% is swept into NTRA or to the Waigani public accounts. I want to indicate that there's a teething issue. Administration of NTRA may not be fully as intended for, and I want to give assurance to the member in his good question that we will certainly look at this. And I still hold view, and our government policy view still stands that the excess, the balance, the windfall, the profit, 90% must come to Waigani public accounts. It's not only in the statutory bodies like fisheries and forestry and the agriculture sector agencies, also for the Kumul companies, Kumul Mineral, Kumul Petroleum. They must support in the first instance the budget support of Waigani public accounts. The residual to keep those companies or those statutory bodies running is maintained. I want to give assurance that an NTR review is being undertaken, in fact, and for us to really finalize this so that we don't kill the golden goose that lays the egg. It is still laying the egg, but the windfalls not kept at the board. Super majority at 90% comes to Waigani public accounts, support the national development agendas instead of controlled by boards at their own level. Sometimes funding parallel programs, sometimes doing things without full scrutiny of the entire parliament, except themselves and the structure that they report to. So the intention was good and is good. It's just the administration of this intention to make sure we don't sabotage the sector concerned, the agencies concerned, the statutory body. They are at work. For instance, National Forestry Authority, that the LEDL must not be compromised. It is an entitlement due to landowners and provinces concerned. So in respect to his second question, I will get my office to ascertain if it is 13 million kina owing to Alotau district, then certainly that fund must be found at the earliest and to be remitted to the district concerned. The forestry districts are entitled to their own revenue as much as the oil and gas district or the mining districts that are entitled to revenue that is provided for by law and in agreement. I want to also, in this last question, on the Oro Milne Bay shares in the oil palm share purchase, I want to apologize to the people of these two provinces if the payment has been delayed. The sale transaction was facilitated in 2015. Money has come in since 2015. The first payment was done, I think, under this government's administration. 10 million each has gone to the two provinces, I think 1 or 2 years ago. I'll confirm in terms of my records is concerned. The balance is owing, and we will ensure we avail that as soon as practical, and the two provinces will, of course, receive a set of funding. If there are discussions, especially around Oro province, as to how we should give this funding, either in cash or kind. There are also proposals being thrown around on some of the state assets in this province, especially in an endeavor to make provinces become economic centers, self-sufficient, self-reliant, doing things they have to do. And so we're looking at other ways, but all in all, having said this, about 40 million kina is owed to the two provinces. 10 million has already come forth. Members of the two provincial governments, you are at your leisure to ask your provincial government's concern as to what happened to the 10 million kina that was sent. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.